on the virtual room with us. We're excited to continue to talk about moving forward our partnership with other agencies and how we advance the thought of elevating the voices of the marginalized communities here in Portland. So thank you for joining us. If you all, thank you. You read my mind. We will go to the next slide. If you're having technical difficulties today, I have a couple of colleagues on the line who can help you. You can call or text the number that is there on the screen, 479-8674. Next slide, please. We have a important but shorter meeting planned for you all today. We'll go through our principles of agreement, and we'll have an opportunity for any public comment. We'll have a project update, and then we will hear from the City of Portland in regards to our progress in the partnership. And then we will have our next steps as we move forward. Next slide, please. You all know that your voice matters to us, so please make sure that you are chiming in, and you know that I am not afraid to call on you if I have not heard from you. Your perspectives help all of us to move the work forward. I trust that you all will be authentic and genuine. We're not new to this, so listen for understanding, dealing with issues and not people. This process is a passion project, and often we're going to experience some discomfort. We rarely grow in comfort, so I know all of us have had quite a bit of growth over the last couple of years together. So I ask, if you can, keep your camera on, remain respectfully engaged, and we will not solve everything today, but we hope that we're one step closer to a brighter future. We ask you to expect and accept non-closure in our meeting today. Next slide, please. At this point, we are going to open the floor for public comment. If there are folks in the public space waiting to be heard, we give an opportunity for you to do that. And my colleague Natalie is going to assist with that. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Erica. As Erica mentioned, members of the public viewing the meeting on the live stream are invited to make a verbal public comment at this time. If you wish to do so, please dial the phone number shown on the right side of the slide. And you will need to enter the meeting ID and passcode that are also shown there. When the time comes, we will invite you to unmute yourself and say your comment. Speakers will have up to 2 minutes for their comment and will be muted at time. If you'd like to provide more extensive comments to members of the HAAB, please see the options listed on the meeting agenda. And if you're joining us on the live stream, making a comment, please remember to mute your speakers to minimize feedback. And with that, I'm checking to see if anyone is in the waiting room wishing to make a comment. And I'm not seeing anyone there at this moment. And Miss Erica, you are muted.
Oh, I gotta watch that. Thank you. I appreciate you for walking us through that. If there is someone listening in, realize there are so many ways for you to contribute comments and thoughts in regards to the work that we're doing here together. So please make sure to avail yourself to the email or the telephone number to leave comments. The team has done a wonderful job of making sure to forward those on to the committee and are diligently working to address every comment that comes in. So thank you so much, Natalie, for your help. Next slide, please. With that, I will hand it over to our project director, Ms. Megan Channel.
Thanks, Erica. And Ms. Sharon Gary Smith, I'm totally with you. I can't believe that it's December 13th, 2022, but I hope that each of you are having a wonderful start to holiday periods and getting some time with your friends and family and kind of reflection on another crazy year that we've had. So hope you get some celebration in there as well. But I've got a couple updates for you. One is related to the supplemental environmental assessment. Actually, both are related to the supplemental environmental assessment. Wanted to touch on the public comment period, as well as some briefings that have occurred, and as well as a reminder of the virtual public hearing tomorrow. So today is December 13th, and so that means that we are 29 days into the 50-day public comment period for the supplemental environmental assessment. There is an online open house that can be found on the project website that continues to provide sort of information around what is the supplemental environmental assessment, the key findings, and how to comment. So if you haven't seen that yet, we can definitely get a link to that in the chat here. And I believe that's been sent to you previously, but if you're having trouble getting there, let us know. We'll make sure that you can see it. Also just wanted to give a reminder that the virtual public hearing is tomorrow at 5 o'clock. And this is where verbal testimony will be received. So it's really an opportunity for the public to share comments on the supplemental EA findings. This is just one way of many to provide comment on the document. And so this is an area where folks have an opportunity to speak their testimony. Those comments will be taken sort of in the same level of, they have the same weight as if you're submitting a written comment via email, if you're mailing in a comment, or if you leave a voicemail on our lines. We're trying to be really broad and inclusive in how people can provide their comments, but they all have equal weight as we go forward. So the public comment period goes through January 4th, just into the new year. And then following the close of the public comment period, we'll be working diligently with our partners at the Federal Highway Administration to review all of the comments that are received, and then taking into consideration those public comments will inform the federal decision document coming in early 2023. So those are kind of the key next steps on the supplemental environmental assessment. I also want to note that we have been busy briefing a number of City of Portland commissions and committees over the past couple of weeks as the comment period was about to kick off and kicked off. And so we have met with the Bicycle Advisory Committee and the city's Pedestrian Advisory Committee back in November. And then this month have presented to the Freight Committee, Historic Landmarks Commission. The planning, I understand that the Planning and Sustainability Commission meeting actually was not held today and was canceled. So we'll make sure that they're getting their information through another medium. And then on Thursday this week, we have a briefing to the City Design Commission. And Bryson Davis, I understand you'll be joining us and kind of representing the HAAB in that presentation to the Design Commission. So thank you for being part of that. So those are key updates related to the supplemental environmental assessment. I also, while not on the agenda or screen here, just wanted to share with you that there are some ongoing conversations and kind of some technical workshops happening across ODOT, the city, and RIP City Management or MODA Center, really over the course of December. We are working through some concerns that have been identified by RIP City Management around the project design, working diligently to understand what those are, as well as what some design solutions may be. I just want to indicate that, one of our commitments as ODOT and the project is that the community voice is part of that process. And I understand that we need to be coming back with more information around that. I know a couple HAAB members are included in some of the technical workshops and upcoming meeting to help represent the HAAB voice. So I want to thank you for that. Wanted you to know that that process was going on and that we commit to kind of bringing back what the outcomes of those conversations will include. So with that, I'll pause and see if there's any questions.
Does anyone have any questions, comments in regards to Megan's update?
What time is what time are you guys on the agenda for the design commission hearing?
Andrew, I'm gonna have to get back to you. Let me double check here, but I can make sure before the meeting closes out that we answer that question for you.
Thank you.
Isn't it one? I got it for 1:30 on Thursday.
Yeah, they usually start at 1:30, so I was just wondering.
Oh, like way
Time.
during the meeting.
Okay, cool. I'll figure it out.
Hey, you keeping us in suspense about this, about the design aspect with those guys over at the Blazers. But how much influence should they have over that? Anything over there? So you got me in suspense now. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, and I think maybe even more broadly, the conversation is just around how we can make sure that the project design is really maximizing the intent of improving safety for all users, be it pedestrians, people riding bikes and vehicles, but with a primary focus on the pedestrian safety component on the local streets. While also making sure that we're staying true to the commitments of Hybrid 3 and really the recommendations of this HAAB around making sure that the design also is, maximizing developable space, reconnecting the local street, really enhancing the district character. So, we have many stakeholders that we're serving as part of the project. MODA and Rip City Management are a substantial one, being right there in the community. But, as we look to our project values as well, one of our commitments is making sure that the voice of the historic Albina community is elevated through that process. So it's one conversation of many that we're having throughout the project development process and will continue to have. And so I don't have any updates by way of outcome, but just wanted to frame that some concerns from that particular stakeholder have been identified. We're partnering with the city. We'll be partnering with the HAAB as we continue forward on what outcomes of that may be, and whether there's some refinements or changes that might need to be made to make sure that we're staying true to our values.
Yeah, but we're going to stay in the loop on that though, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to spring a chains on us and say, that's it for you, you naughty kid, you're going to go to your bedroom for the rest of the night. But they're not going to just be able to make a change or whatever without some kind of mitigation, right?
Yeah, one of the key commitments that we've talked about as a group is maintaining that community engagement. So that'll be part of the process as we go forward and in determining what the next steps are.
All right. One other question that I've got on that, which I'm still a little unclear on, is why are we only getting to their concerns now? Like, why are they just bringing them to us now when we have this piece of the plan in place for almost a year and a half?
I'll be honest, I'm not certain that I can answer that by way of the timing that the concerns were brought to us, but we know what they are now, and so we're establishing a process to make sure that they're addressed.
Mr. Edwards, just one moment, Mr. Washington. I see Mr. Edwards' hand and then Ms. Sharon, and then I'll come back to Mr. Washington.
Thank you, Erica. I'm kind of piggybacking on what John was saying. That's what I wanted to talk about as well. I was hoping that that Bryson would have an opportunity to come back and give us a report prior to any decision making. I see heads nodding, but
I wasn't sure if Megan was going to chime in. I know, again, there have been a couple of work sessions. Bryson and I had the opportunity. I want you all to know, in my role, I definitely am an advocate in making sure that the community voice is heard. And so even at the leadership level, the facilitator there wanted to make sure that the community voice was a part of these conversations. And so as we learn more, be assured I will make sure that you all are represented, that there's information that gets to you, and that the project stays true to the values that we have adopted.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that Bryce is not left out there hanging and, and has to make a decision without being able to come back to us, and, that was all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I won't be making any decisions on behalf of the group. And I think if they end up going in a direction that seems like it's trying to go around us, I'll definitely call that out.
Yeah, I don't question that at all. I'm just questioning the process to make sure that you do have that opportunity to come back to us before any final decisions are made.
Absolutely.
Keith, I'll say, and you've got Bryson and Erica there with that as well, but you've also got my commitment that I'm going to carry your comment or request forward to that group as well.
Ms. Sharon?
I think I have two pieces, and I'll make them brief. The first one is in response to what has been raised by Keith, has been raised by John, and I certainly have a concern. I appreciate hearing after all of these years that we are being heard by saying we want to be heard. But for me, the evidence is always, I know that we're being heard. The evidence is how we were heard in the outcomes. And when I hear those with more power, which is familiar, or those who are accustomed to sitting at running the tables, can come in and can make comments or bring something to the table that elevates them and minimizes our contribution, which is also familiar. I'm concerned. I like the new process, but the outcomes in so many instances still mirror the history and not the present. So how to mitigate that, how to ensure that it's just not written that we were heard, but there's evidence that what was heard from us impacts and either contributes to decisions or stops them from being made without us. And so that's important to me. And I guess when I heard John, if I heard you correctly, Mr. Washington, when you ask about the possibility or the ability of those with power, such as the Blazers, to be able to insert to or to change the process, I would like us to have some kind of caveat that unless you're winning more, you can't influence the decision-making. You know what I'm talking about, fans. That's important to me, is that there's clear evidence and a trail that is new. And as much as I love Dame Dalla, I would want to have the Trailblazers understanding they're sitting in participation, in collaboration with us, and don't get to play some kind of winning ticket that we don't all have a part of, or any other body like that that is so familiar and comfortable with the history of being the ones who lean and change the table. This is critical. It was our community that was harmed.
Indeed. Thank you for that, Ms. Sharon. Rest assured, I'm carrying that in every room that I sit in and representing our interests and making sure that the community is not just heard, but that the voice is considered, that there are outcomes. Indeed. Other thoughts or comments? Andrew, I did see that you had a comment in the chat. I believe it was in regards to the SCA.
Yeah, I was, just added on to the community engagement piece. I know every time there's a timeline, and, sometimes those timelines is more sooner than later, or just more timely in a more paceful way to get the community involved. So I was just curious to see if there was an expectation to kind of like extend the public comment period of time, just to get more feedback on these, on the EA, the supplement EA input.
Yeah, I can jump in on that one. And so I think for now, no, we aren't planning to extend the public comment period. The public comment period is really, it's part of the federal process for environmental documents. And the federal process is that the comment periods are 30 days long. And so we wanted to make sure that we were upfront maximizing more time for the community. Also an acknowledgement that we were landing over the holiday period. And so we nearly doubled the comment period to 50 days to be able to build in some more time. And so for that reason, we wouldn't be extending it beyond the January 4th date at this point.
Okay, and will be able to see the data from the engagement on our next meeting or in future ones?
Yeah, I mean, so we're anticipating getting a lot of public comments. And so that what the team will do is take those, but we do plan on publishing all of the, all of the comments that were received on the project website. So you'd be able to see what the comments are. It'll be our job to make sure that we're categorizing them and then providing, kind of summarizing them and responding to them as part of the environmental decision document in coordination with the Federal Highway Administration. But while we're doing that work, we want to make sure that the community has access to what's been shared. So it's going to take a little bit of time for the team to kind of compile that and get it ready. But the intention is to have that up on the project website as soon as possible after the close of the comment period. Yeah. And I just want to emphasize that while the close of the comment period for the supplemental EA is on January 4th, like our conversations around, the project continuing and the project design, similar to the conversations that we've been having around the urban design, future conversations of what's going to go on the highway cover, all of that, like that doesn't stop on January 4th. That continues. And the January 4th deadline is really just on the the findings and the evaluations specific to the supplemental environmental assessment. Engagement input on the project is welcome as we carry forward.
Thank you so much, all. I'm not seeing any additional hands. Thank you, Megan, for giving us those updates. I appreciate you being committed to the values. Miss Natalie, if you'll share the slides once again.
Erica, I have a response to Andrew Clark's question on when are we on for the design commission. 1:35 to 3:35 is our time slot.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Megan.
Yeah, and I believe Troy will be sharing the presentation. I have it queued up if you prefer, Troy.
I will bring it up.
Awesome. Well, with that, I'd like to welcome our partners, colleagues from the city of Portland. We have Caitlin Reff with us today, as well as Troy Doss from BPS that will be sharing an overview of the proposed community framework agreement and the scoping for that document. Troy?
All right. Well, thank you all. It's good to see you all again. Just for those of you who haven't met me before, I'm Troy Dawson with the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. I'm a senior planner with our Central City team, and I'm going to be leading the development or the scoping, at least, of the community framework agreement, which is kind of a two-phase approach, really. So we'll walk through that a little bit here in a second. So just to let you know, we were through the intergovernmental agreement with ODOT and the city. Our role as BPS is to lead the scoping effort, and the agreement stipulates, and we fully support this, that we're starting with the independent cover assessment as our North Star for this. There was a lot of work was put into that. Good visioning there. We have no intention of doing anything other than trying to make sure that the highway cover that's developed is able to accommodate this. And then our role is to figure out what is the city's role in this, where we have financial agreements and governance and other responsibilities, both in terms of what an interim solution is, opening day, which we'll get to later, as well as the final proposal that is really pretty well articulated in the ICA. Building off of the ICA, again, we're looking at using the principles that came out of it were focused on trying to make sure that the cover maximizes high quality development parcels, but that there's flexibility. So we want to note that we could not master plan this site necessarily 100% right now and identify exactly what uses are going to be in what locations. So we're going to make sure that the cover is designed and the infrastructure supporting the cover is done in a way that allows for flexibility, so that as time and money becomes available to implement certain projects and programs, it can happen fairly seamlessly, we hope. And then our approach too, from both an urban design as well as how PBOT's going to be designing local streets, is really to figure out a way to take these restored streets and create more active frontages again, really creating a public realm that's very pedestrian friendly and very pedestrian focused. And then to the degree possible, we're going to be looking at how we can implement things that minimize the exposure to development and uses on the cover to noise and pollution that's generated by the freeway below it. We're going to build off of, again, this is really where I think our North Star kind of commitment comes in, is to look at the program priorities that came out of the ICA. So all 10 of these are going to be what we're going to be looking when we work with the city bureaus. We're going to be working on how do we create a cover that and governance agreement in the long run that's going to allow support of this going forward. So I'm just giving an overview of these. I think you're all quite familiar with those. And then the idea is, how do we achieve something that looks along these lines? We can't guarantee what it exactly will look like, but we want to have areas where there's community supportive programs and uses, as well as public and programmable gathering spaces on the cover itself. So as we get towards that, the IC kind of started laying out questions, which we totally agree with. It's, how can this project serve community aspirations on the highway and covers and areas immediately adjacent to the highway covers within the project area? So when I say covers, a lot of times I'm also going to be referring to the properties that are being purchased by ODOT to support the project, but that will become surplus properties later on. So what's the degree to which those can be utilized later on for wealth creation uses that are identified in the ICA that may be more appropriate on terra firma as opposed to on a structure. That could include things like residential development, for instance, uses that might be sensitive to the vibrations that might be common on a freeway cover like this. What modifications to the current design and configuration need to be done to reflect the ICA? We're already on that. So we've been working with ODOT and their engineers on that a bit, trying to figure out ways in which we can realign how the structures are coming together that form the cover. Because it's really a series of structures with expansion joints between them. How can we line those to better reflect the grid that we're restoring to the street network, so we can create rectilinear building parcels that are going to be more flexible for development moving forward. And then what are the architectural and engineering considerations to promote economic development there? And I'll touch on that a little bit in a moment. The elements of the community framework agreement as we see it, and this is what we're scoping towards, is what is the interim land use concept and programming. So that's going to be, let's say, opening day until development really starts to take hold on the covers. We don't want to have an environment that is stark and just concrete and steel. We want to have something that is more aesthetically pleasing, helps really connect that urban form that was taken out by the development of I-5. But we also want to make sure that those spaces are programmable in the interim for uses that support the community's desires. So that could be things such as, a temporary marketplace, or maybe places where you could cite things like My People's Market or other types of uses like that. So things that won't necessarily be there in perpetuity, or before there is a final full built out of that for a building for that use, we can create a temporary space for that in the meantime. But the primary really focus is going to be, how do we create buildable pads and locations for the long-term uses. In support of that, we're looking at doing some additional design work here soon, where we will start to really break down of the uses that are identified in the independent cover assessment. Are there other uses that might want to be considered there as well? Some of those uses, could they be co-housed in different types of buildings, or do they need to be standalone? Do they have certain access requirements or parking requirements, or loading and drop-off requirements that would kind of predicate where actually on the covers is the best location for them, as opposed to one that might look good, but wouldn't be serviceable for the uses that are being proposed. So we're going to be working through that, and also making sure that we can start addressing some of the nuances of the slope on the cover, because this is not a flat development site. There are parts of it that are a little flatter than others, but there is a pretty significant grade difference between the north east and southwest side of the cover. So we want to make sure that we're addressing that as this is coming together, figuring out not only how we can create more as level building paths as possible, but also areas where the interface with the public realm is going to be active. It's not going to be a dead space. It's going to be something that's really kind of creating a sense of community, and areas where we can create level areas where we can create programmable outdoor space. And that seemed to be something that was really highlighted in the ICA. I think that's a great idea. So we need to figure out how to accommodate that somewhere on the covers, or maybe a few places to accommodate that. And then the big structure that we're working towards in terms of scoping this is identifying kind of the known unknowns in terms of what governance is going to be. What's going to be the role of the city in this? What's the role of the state and ODOT in terms of managing this? Because they're going to own this in perpetuity. We're helping in terms of helping the community find a place there. But the reality is the owner's ODOT. So we need to figure out what constraints they have on this. What's the city role going to be in that? Is it in support of open space? Is it providing dollars for different programs? We'll work that out. Who's the right entities within the city to support that? How do we work with the community on this? What does that process look like? And the assumption is that we're going to be establishing or trying to set up a community-based organization that will manage this in the long run. So how do we do that? Who are the right players to be part of that organization? What's the structure of that look like? So we'll be outlining that, presenting that to our city council and to the state, and then hopefully that will move into the next phase after the scoping of really trying to solidify that. We'll also be recommending to our city council, excuse me, I'm finding a cold here. We're recommending next steps that need to be accomplished. So what are the answers that still need to be done on the governance structure? Likely going to be quite a few, including getting people to sign on to taking responsibility and ownership of some of the key pieces here. There's going to need to be some zoning code amendments to allow this to happen, because we're creating space that doesn't currently exist. And that cover is going to, it's more of a wonky kind of regulatory thing, but it actually is in and outside of 2 different plan districts. It's in and outside of 4 different land use zones. We want to make sure that when development comes in, it's as straightforward as possible on this. So we'll have to figure that out. There'll have to be amendments to our transportation system plan, Title 17. So we're creating streets that don't currently exist there. We're creating new multimodal paths that don't exist. So we need to make sure that's reflected in our planning documents as well. And then we'll be giving a fairly detailed list of next steps in terms of figuring out the governance issues to City Council. So I see there's a question there, and I'm pretty much wrapping this part up. So let's just go ahead and open that up.
All right, Miss Leslie, I see your hand.
Yes. You said we are going to be making the decision about a community-based organization, and we are going to do this and we are going to do that. Who is the we that you're talking about? Is it planning and sustainability? Is it along with the HAAB? Is it city council? Who are you asking about who should be part of that group?
That's what we have to figure out. That's going to be a big part of this, is trying to figure out, we is not the Bureau of Planning and Sustainability, and we is not, City Council has to approve a direction, but the reality is that needs to be influenced by all of the stakeholders here. So it's going to be people who are currently been very active, members of the HAAB. It's also going to probably need to expand into other voices that aren't currently at the table. This is a project that, especially when we lead to zoning amendments at some point, the state governance rules require us to make sure we're doing outreach and public involvement on that. So we'll make sure that the other boundaries that we're within, so the Elliott Neighborhood Association, the Lloyd Community Association, they're informed and aware of where we're going on this. We're going to do what we're going to be trying to build their support for this and moving it forward. But That's an outreach that we're legally required to do. And other voices. There's probably going to be some multimodal transportation voices. There's probably going to be some community development voices that are interested in weighing in on this before we can make a final decision. We, being the city council, will have to make a decision about where we go next. We are not creating a final framework agreement here, though. We're scoping it out. And as we start to identify the elements that we think need to be in there, we being the city at this point, we're going to be fleshing that out consistently with the HAAB and other community members to making sure that we're reflecting all of this. So it's not, we're still learning a lot about this whole process. And quite honestly, we've only been at the table for 6 months. And it's been quite an educational experience. And there's not a day that goes by that I'm not learning new things about what's transpired over the last 2-3 years. So that was all.
I'm sorry for interrupting you. I hear you. So I do have a couple other questions. How are you all interacting with Albina Vision Trust? Where do they play in all of this? And are there any Black people, and I'm being very specific, at BPS that are working on this project?
I can answer the first one now. No, we don't have a lot of Black staff. So no, but we're going to be shopping this through with the community every step of the way. We have other members and project members on this larger team that with ODOT and the city who are people of color. So we're going to be including that. I'm sorry, I'm missing, there was a question before that.
How are you all interacting with Albina Vision Trust?
So we recently applied, so we're working with them on a number of areas. We've recently applied, the city recently applied for a Reconnecting Communities grant with Albina Vision to look at not just this area, but really the larger area that they're looking at to try to establish what our role would be working with them on other parcels. So they're looking at like the Blanchard School side and waterfront parcels, maybe areas that are associated with the Rose Quarter right now. If we get that grant, we'll be working with them a little closer and trying to broaden the who they're working with as well. So we recognize that there's a need to increase the number of voices that are working on this. We want to make sure that their process, especially if we're partners with them, is respecting that as well. So we've been working on that for a while, hasn't finally been scoped out. We're not going to have any idea probably until late January as to whether we're getting the funding for that. If we don't get it through that, we're going to find another way to fund that type of effort. The key element there is to try to develop a more expansive public engagement process so that we're addressing both what Albina Vision's looking at, as well as what's happening on the covers. Not presuming that they are going to necessarily be involved in the covers or that they're going to be this, future community development corporation. No decisions been made on that.
Man, go ahead, Leslie. I hear you fight, girl. I want to get in.
Okay, I just have one more question. Just one last question.
Leslie, go ahead. No, I'm with you. Where you going?
You said that you're going to have to reach out to Elliott and to Lloyd. And as we all know, that those areas are very gentrified where Black people used to be, they're no longer there. And so I'm just going to express my concern as a longtime Portlander that remembers when Holiday Park School was over where the Lloyd Tower is, that their voices do not outshine the voices of the Black folks on this group and that have lived here and lived through this. So I'm just putting that out there to you, that I understand you have to talk to them because you're required to, but I just don't want to get to a point where, because Elliott or Lloyd or whoever is unhappy with something, that they get what they want, and what we've asked for the last 3 years gets kicked to the curb, and nobody's considering it anymore because it might piss off some white folks that have businesses over there. And I'm just being real. So I appreciate you putting your time into this. But I'm just I work for the city and I know how things go. So I'm just, telling you from my own perspective, what my concerns are.
We hear you.
Thank you.
Oh,
Mr. Edwards, I see your hand.
Do I need to raise a hand? Because
I would appreciate
Gotta raise your hand, John.
Okay, I'm gonna raise a hand. I'm gonna figure out how to do this, but you bet my hand coming.
Go to reactions and click on that.
we'll go to Mr. Washington just after Mr. Edwards.
Thank you. And Leslie, and I certainly appreciate your comments and your remarks, and this kind of gets back to something that we discussed at the beginning of our involvement with this process, and that was, Troy, you stated that you don't have very many, or maybe you don't have any Black folks that are working at BPS, and we talked early on about having our young people, our high school kids, either as interns or working maybe part-time at those city agencies, because they don't get civics in school. And so that's how they're going to get involved and understand what's going on here, because they're the future. And they need to not get it by osmosis. They need to get it directly through their education. And like I say, this was brought out early on. And for you to say that, and I'm not picking on you. All you're doing is stating fact. But the bottom line is, we should have some of our Black children that are high school age involved in this process. They should be working for BPS. That gives them some income and gives them an opportunity to learn about how the city works and how different parts of the city work. And I know that's not what this project is about, but it is what this project is about. Because, our young people have to understand, and the only way they're going to understand is get immersed in it early on at a young age, so they understand exactly what's going on and how things work. So whatever we have to do to, whoever we have to talk to get our young high school kids involved and get them hired on down at the city so they can see what goes on and how things work, how things come together. Because if they don't know how the rules of the game, they can't play.
So let me address just one thing there. When I say the question I was answering directly is on the project team for the city, which at this point is basically me and one other person from our bureau. None of us are Black or people of color. Do we have Black associates at the bureau? Yes. Has the bureau been making a lot of effort to expand a workforce that's representative of people of color across the city? Yes. I'm primarily been assigned to this because I have 24 years experience working on projects just like this with the city. And I think if you asked around, you'd see that I have pretty good ability in past projects to get to know people in communities, despite the fact that I may not look exactly like them or have their experience. So I'm going to do my best on that. In regards to bringing in younger voices, it's a great idea. We usually during the summertime hire what we call community aides. We've done that in the past. We haven't focused so much at the high school level. Usually it's more people who are in college, but and in that area, we definitely have a pretty diverse workforce, but we can look into that.
Let me just share with you. When I was in high school, I worked during the school year part-time, and then I worked full-time during the summer at a government agency. And so that should be happening today and now. Not just during the summertime, it needs to happen during this. They can get credits for working and get paid as well. That's what should be happening in my opinion. Because like I say, I did it 50 some odd years ago. My God, we're going backwards.
Well, and I think it's really interesting.
And I know you don't do the hiring, but certainly with 24 years, you can say, you know what? I need some Black kids in high school at Jefferson High School, Roosevelt High School, that might be interested. We need to go out and recruit them and hire them so they can work part-time. They can work down here 2 days a week or 3 days a week, maybe 10 hours a week or whatever. And so they can get exposed and immersed into this. That's what, I don't mean to beat this point down, but I'm gonna beat it down because it's not happening, damn it. And it should have been happening, like I say, all along. We talked about this early on. And like I say, I'm not trying to beat up on you, but I'm really tired of this. Like I say, 50 years ago, I was down, I'd get out of school early, and I would go downtown and go to work. And during the summertime, I was working full time. And that should be happening to our kids today, and it's not. And I want to know why. And I don't want to hear we can't find no kids and that are interested. I don't want to hear that. That dog don't hunt. So I need to hear something about, you're going to go back to the city tomorrow and tell them that you got beat up at this meeting, and they need to hire some young Black kids to come in here and work part-time at the city.
I will spread the word.
Thank you for your advocacy, Mr. Edwards. Mr. Washington, I see your hand.
I'm gonna try to navigate this because I'm experiencing something. And what's the gentleman's name who's speaking again? I think I've heard him speak a couple of times before. You made as you answered some of those questions, my stomach began to hurt a little bit. But I think when you started talking, I remember closing my eyes and something said, "Here it comes," you know. It sounded like the voice of the overseer or something, that voice of authority. Out of all the work that we put into this, it sounded like a voice that came in and said, "Okay, thank you for what you've done up to now. We're taking over from here." And it just rubbed me in such a way to where I just heard this authority that almost made me just decide to get up and turn this computer off. So, you know, even this thing of how we arrived to here. And so you got the answer that you gave about how closely you're working with Albina Trust. And it seems like this whole way here, y'all been handling us. And I'm really resentful about that, because I've watched the way I've been with this from almost its very inception. And I've watched how the games have been played all the way until where we are right now. And I'm still feeling like I'm being handled, you know, and, you know, this whole notion that the Black community is somehow or another can just be moved around and toiled with. You know, not only is Elliott, the neighborhood associations have a significant voice in these matters, but if you look at the bylaws, you'll see that the neighborhood business associations have more input into land use matters than the neighborhood associations. But I didn't hear you mention them. You know, there's just, to me right about now, I'm not sure how to necessarily respond to you, but it really doesn't feel, it feels foul. Okay, because I feel, like I said, it seems like now that the city and Albina have come back to the table, that y'all seem to have some notion of which way we need to go, and you didn't necessarily need our input to get there. So you know, I'm just very uncomfortable with this portion of this for that reason. Don't have me sitting here at this table and acting as if my voice matters when somehow or another you plan to have some kind of overseer approach to this anyway, and you just say thank you for your input, and we're going to take it from here. So that to me just doesn't feel okay. So rather than not if that was the intent of this or not, that's the way I experienced it.
I'm sorry it was taken that way. That is not the intent.
Yeah, I mean, because there was just a sense of arrogance that I just didn't feel comfortable with. Yeah, and however that wasn't your intent, but it just seemed as if you guys had all the mechanisms and all the wheels at this point in time, and you're making all the decisions as you go forward from here. And if that's the case, then I don't need to be sitting here right now.
Well, that's not the case. And we are working on trying to figure out how to have a much broader conversation about this. Now, I'll address a couple things that have been said. I understand the past with the Elliott neighborhood, and we are talking the local business association. That would be the Lloyd at some point. We'll have to, but we're only crossing our T's there because we could go down this process and then try to adopt something later on. and they will stop us dead in our tracks because we didn't cross off all the legal boxes we're supposed to check by including them as part of the outreach. That does not mean that we're going to have them come in, nor are we going to support anyone coming in and trying to derail this or significantly change what's already been established by the community. There's a pretty clear direction and vision here. Our role, as we see it, is to try to work with you and ODOT to make it come to fruition. That's it. We're not trying to change it. We're not assuming we have all the answers. So super complicated project. It's a complicated project on multiple levels. Usually you don't build a structure and put structures on it. That has its own level of complexity. The political complexity in terms of wealth generation and trying to heal the community is another level that has not really been accomplished before. We do not go into this with any sense of arrogance. We don't go in any sense that we know what we're doing. We're going to do our best. We're going to make mistakes along the way, and we're going to correct. So I'm just trying to speak as plainly as possible what the elements of this project are. I wouldn't take anything out of that and to try to assume that I have any idea about where this is going or what the final solution is going to be here.
Appreciate that, Troy. Thank you. I do see a couple of hands raised. I'll go to Ms. Estelle and then to Mr. Modica.
Hello. Yeah, I wanted to speak to Mr. Doss here, and I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. I think there's kind of a bit of misunderstanding about the difference maybe between Albina Vision Trust and the HAAB, and maybe who both of us are in relation to the project. And I think it's when you said, you know, the city of Portland is bringing the community into it, and it's our role to bring the community back to it, and those types of things. And the HAAB represents the community. And I don't know if you know who we represent, you know, Albina Legacy Families. There's really no difference between AVT and the HAAB at face value. We're supposed to represent the same groups of people. So you should see us as the same, really, when you deal with us, because we're both representing the Black community. So although you have one group maybe that has entered the project at a different time, and maybe here, we're the same actually. So the city of Portland, do you kind of see what I'm trying to say to you? We're your constituents the same way that AVT is your constituents and the citizens that you represent. Does that make sense?
I don't feel I'm confused by that, but what I would say is
if I feel like I'm having to tell you.
Let me finish. Excuse me.
No, but you weren't letting me finish. If I feel like I'm having to tell you, then I feel like it's something that needs to be cleared up. And it needs, and I don't think I'm the only one on the HAAB that feels that way. And really don't ever speak to me the way you just tried to speak to me just now. Really don't do that, sir. And maybe we need to start having these meetings in person after that. I thank you.
I thought
people are getting a little bit too comfortable here.
Excuse me. Okay. You asked me a question. I was trying to respond to it.
Yeah, I just wasn't done talking. Okay. So but we're the same. Okay. And I think that it would maybe do you and the project, it would be of value to step back a little bit and learn about us and maybe come back. So maybe in the next meeting, we're not feeling the way that we're feeling when you're speaking to us, because there's an obvious disconnect. Thank you.
Can I respond to something that was asked?
Yes, sir.
I get very nervous, and I know Erica has heard me say this multiple times since we've met over the last month or two.
Yes, sir.
The phrase community makes me very nervous because I feel it's used frequently by people to try to describe something that's monolithic, as if we speak to one group, we have spoken to everybody who represents the Black community. I'm not saying that this is not a very representative group, and I'm not saying that AVT isn't either, but I don't see AVT on this group. I want to make sure that there's more integration of those, what they're doing, and what their interests are, who they think their stakeholders are. We're trying to make sure that we are covering all that. I'm not saying we know. I want to make sure that we actually are bringing as many people into this and not leaving anybody behind, because this is our one chance to do this. If we don't get it right this time, we further disenfranchise people further, they're never going to talk to us again. We recognize that. So that's what I'm trying to say is when I'm trying to broaden this up from the stance of having the broadest community representation I can, I'm going to. Not to say that this isn't a very cohesive group, and I know you, for every one person here, probably represents a whole bunch of other interests on there, but I'm looking at 12 people on a panel. I need to make sure that I'm checking every box off to get as many people involved in this as possible, because this has to be owned by others when this project's over. It's not really going to be the city's project. It's going to be the community's project. We want to make sure it's representative and that the right ownership is there. So if I say anything to make it seem like I see a disconnect there, I don't, but I want to make sure that it is fully representative.
Thanks, Troy. I appreciate that. And I will concur. We've had a few conversations thus far, and the consensus is that there is a broad and wide representation of community stakeholders, legacy families, organizations, and it is, you all know my goal. I believe it is Director Channel's goal, and I believe the city's, to make sure that we are widely representing the value of the Black community. And so you have my commitment to continue to push that value forward. Mr. Modica, I see your hand, and then to Ms. Sharon, and then Mr. Washington.
Well, greetings and blessings to everyone. Erica, we communicated about my arrival at the meeting. Troy, take a breath. Just take a collective breath, and recognize that, as we've spoken before, if we compared this with the I-90 project in the state of Washington and the bridge that was built, that was a project that people started on and retired from the state before it was finished, or as it was finished. So I think some of what folks are feeling and hearing is in the delivery, not your intention. You know, blessings to you and your being that you're around, but you probably won't be with BPS when all of this is done, right? Because we're not just looking at the I-5 Rose Quarter. We're looking at the interstate bridge replacement. We're looking at the establishment of land where land was taken away. And I asked a couple of questions in the chat. One, is the recently announced tort claim going to slow down or supersede this project towards forward movement? I think maybe Ms. Channel or maybe Mr. Finn or someone else could probably answer that. And then I asked, who is your commissioner? Troy, who is your commissioner right now for BPS?
Currently, it's Commissioner Rubio, although they're going to announce some shifting in January. So hard to say.
Okay. So since we understand how the deck chairs get moved, I would like to suggest to Ms. Warren that perhaps we could have Commissioner Rubio and Mr. Doss come back, or whoever the commissioner is. I would ask that we refer to Mr. Andrew Campbell's chat message. And then I want to go back to what Mr. Edwards said, who has been a stalwart in the trades and knows what he is talking about. I am aware that workforce development is on the front end of every high-level elected currently in office and those coming in. And so I would suggest to you that kind of be open to what we're putting in front of you to help you, in that we know there are schools with career pathing programming built into their curriculum. We know that we have NGOs that have career pathing built into the services that they provide. We know that Constructing Hope, we know that Roosevelt High School, we know that Benson Polytechnic, we know that De La Salle High School. We have students We have students. We have early college scholars through PCC. We have students, and that if there is a willingness for BPS, along with the governance through the council and your commission, to just say, we're going to take that part on, right? Not as a makeup job experience, but as a opportunity, right? Because the biggest hurdle we're facing in the preservation of our civil workforce is that we don't have any succession planning. Who's the next Troy Doss going to be? Do you know? Have you even thought about that?
Yeah, I've thought about it a lot. Unfortunately, I've
Right.
not been able to recruit that person, but yeah, I hear you.
But my point is, right, without the levity, my point is that should be as important to you as it is to us. And not that there's anything wrong with what you reflect and represent, but it sure would be nice to see us, the community, that monolith, reflected in the future workforce that is going to benefit, might even live on the block face, might have a business on the block face, may participate in governance. And then my last question is regarding governance. Is there any work underway to develop the agreements between Metro, the city, ODOT, and Multnomah County? And I will stop right there. But Troy, you're okay, and no one's mad at you, but we have a job to do here. This is a 100-year project, and so there's not a lot of room for padding around and, you know, being hypersensitive. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments, Mr. Modica. And just I'll verbalize Andrew's comments in regards to other CBOs, schools, nonprofit that would love to be involved in the project and just don't know how. And so Andrew is willing to reach out and give us some resources in regards to how we connect with some of those as we move further into this kind of community framing. Megan, I know you may want to address Mr. Modica's comment, so I'm going to go to you first and then to Mr. Washington. I know that we are just at time, so after Mr. Washington, I'll take the microphone back. So Megan.
And I'll be quick, but I didn't want to miss the connection on that. So the answer is that Mr. Modica, I don't know to how the tort claim will affect. What I do know is that, you know, our work here together is to make sure this project has outcomes that are benefiting the historic Albina community. How, you know, what those benefits are, what comes out of this community framework agreement, what ultimately goes on top of the highway cover. We need you to help us define that, but specifically how it relates to the recent lawsuit, I don't know, but as I learn more or we know more, I'll share that out as I can.
I appreciate that, and I know that there will be restrictions on any public comment on current litigation, but you know, it's top of mind, right? It's top of mind because in the end, we all want the right things, not just the thing, right? We want the right things for where we live.
Indeed. Mr. Washington?
Yes, thank you. Wow, this has been really intense for me. And hey, Kat, Modica, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate the way you laid that, you know, and, you know, you navigated that well. And one of the things, and I hope the young man doesn't feel like I'm attacking him, I'm just trying to share with him what I'm experiencing in the presentation. And I think for me, the reason why I'm experiencing that is because at some point in time, I believed that this was a safe space. But somehow or another, you know, some of the statements to me indicated that this young man, in his internal presentation, he stands for something. And that very thing that he stands for, I think is part of the issue that I'm dealing with. And so, but but just to say this as in a response to something that he did say, that he was intent on letting us know he had spoke to you about, and that thing was about a monolithic society or a community. No, we're not monolithic, but what we are is we operate with principle. Okay, so we don't all have to be and see the same thing through the same eyes, but we damn sure better stand for the fact that we will protect and advance our community. And for me, it is really what I'm looking for him to understand is that, yes, we are not monolithic, but yet we do stand for principle, that we stand collectively in the attempt to advance our community in such a way to where it can benefit from some of the opportunities that are presented to us today. But I will not be, how would I say, be manipulated and to be used in such a way that is deceptive, and that you're going to stand with me and say to me, who do you believe, me or your lying ass eyes? I'm going to tell you every day, every time, that I'm a realist, and I'll be standing there right in your face trying to ask you, why do you see life the way that you do? So for me, I do appreciate this opportunity to experience that in this room, but whoever that young man is, I hope that he doesn't come into the hood one day trying to somehow facilitate a meeting with young Black men, because it would probably be me escorting him to the car.
Well, Mr. Washington, I appreciate you feeling that this is a space where you can share how you're feeling. I cannot speak for Troy. I will say that in our conversations, it has been very, very clear, and we have been aligned in making sure that there is a broad representation from our community, and that value be respected and elevated. And so I understand our history here, even in light of what Ms. Sharon shared. And I think we'll continue to have these conversations. We say in our principles of agreement that we may experience some discomfort, and that's when we all grow. I think this is an opportunity for us to continue to hear each other and to listen. I think some of the things that were shared, our receptiveness to the information is guarded with some of the things we've experienced in the past. But I would encourage us to stay in the process, to continue to be true to how we feel. And I believe that there is a path forward for us to do this collaboratively. I agree that we need to get this right this time. And so that this is a unique and wonderful opportunity. I believe we'll have more of these moments where it's a passionate and uncomfortable, perhaps, conversation. But I am optimistic that there are enough of us to make sure that we hold the project and all of our partners accountable to the values that have been set. Prior to us moving into our next steps, I wanted to give Ms. Sharon Gary Smith the floor for just a moment as we are closing out our meeting.
Thanks so much, Erica. Thank you, John, and thank you, Kevin, and just everyone who has spoken today with the same level of engagement that we committed to from the very beginning. And I mean the beginning, when I saw John Washington and Liz Fodor and others' names on a body that was disbanded. And then we are the second coming of that. I remember all of that history. It's important how it informs you. That's what brought me here. That's what made me agree, be willing to take on the task of joining with community members, those that I really respect, that I've known from a distance and even up close. That's what makes today a familiar day, about truth embodied in our experiences and our willingness to figure out how to go together no matter how difficult it is, how different it is from our own opinions. That's what kept bringing me to this table again and again. My time is treasured, as is all of you. But the amount of time we put into this, those of us who don't have any time, or those who've used up a lot of our time, because I'm older, this says something about the significance of figuring out how to work with entities that are supposed to support us, but that were used or created ways to disarm us, to take away, to redistribute that which was ours. So I don't take this lightly. And the time of service on here has really been significant for me from all the places that I could be. I think it's appropriate that Try Excellence is a theme as well as an intentional name of an organization that's guided us. We are trying to work at excellence through a horrible, disarming, and abusive past in Portland, Oregon, in the City of Roses. And I just want to honor all of you, how often you came, how tired we came, how often we left shaking our heads differently at each other and at ourselves, and pondering if we'd come again, whether it was the city before us, the state before us. I don't take any of this lightly. And I also recently, I will be stepping down. I will be transitioning from president of the NAACP. It's been a 2-year journey of the hardest uncompensated labor you can imagine. Next time I get to be a volunteer anywhere, I'll decide the terms of my engagement. And I think that it's appropriate that as I'm leaving and going to that retirement that I earned, that Rona interrupted in 2020, I have booked about 4 trips now all around the world because I want to make up for the time that I lost and gain the new time. And I think it'd be inappropriate for me to continue with this body as much as I love the engagement. And John, that's why I stayed in here, because I love a good tussle and even better outcomes. But I do want to say that one of the contributors to it, just quickly, is I believe my time, my service, my expertise, my community rooting, all have tremendous value. We don't place a price on it, but I know what I'm worth. And the struggle for me, it may not have been that for you, is the way that we were compensated. That I don't know about the rest of you, but gift cards for my labors are not a fair trade. I'm holding 90% of the amount that was gifted to me because in many cases, they're not accepted. They're virtual. They get rejected by the big retailers. They get rejected all over the place because they recognize that prepaid, I'm guessing, I end up using my money. So I don't know about others, but I've sat on city, metro, state, county, and they compensated me, as we decided, in tender that I can take to the bank or deposit in my bank account. And this has been so much labor. And to have gift cards that I can't always use or have to decide how I use was kind of the final barrier to continuing to put in that work. So I'm going to be joining you. I'm going to be sitting in meetings. I might be a public agitator who does have comment. I hope that you all will stick and stay in ways that make sense to you. I hope that the state will consider, ODOT, I don't know if they compensate their employees with gift cards, but I'd find that unusual. And I think the thinking about how decisions are made on us and for us versus those that we have clearly indicated today that we participate in actively making. I hope that that thinking goes back. I would go before the Transportation Commission and tell them, you had the honor of some of the best, most brilliant, most courageous, most dedicated minds working to lift and move this I-5 Rose Quarter Improvement Project that's improving on the historical damage. And you need to compensate and listen and consider and be honored to have us in your midst. I just wanted to say that so that the surprise of it, I first told Erica, I will miss her and her excellent, gracious, compassionate, smart work. And I hope to all of you as you go into the rest of this season that you stay safe that you stay healthy and you continue to be great. Thanks.
Bless you and thank you for your leadership,
Yes,
Miss
thank
Sharon Garrett Smith. You
Thank
are
you.
a community
She
treasure.
ain't going nowhere. Mo, she ain't going nowhere. She gonna be around here making our lives crazy anyway. She ain't going nowhere.
I just booked Panama, so I may not be back.
That's all right, but we still gonna see you. We know you ain't going nowhere.
I'm gonna
I
see
love
the
you, girl, but
postcard
you
from
ain't
the
going
end.
nowhere. I ain't gonna let you go too far now. I'm gonna be finding you.
Thank you
Thank you
all
very much,
Sharon,
Sharon.
yes, we so appreciate your service to this community, not just in this capacity. It far extends beyond your service to the NAACP and to this group. I agree with Ms. Modica. You definitely are a treasure. And I know that I'll be able to call on you. So thank you for your service here. And I'm sure that Director Channel will be able to carry your comments forward. Troy, Caitlin, I know we didn't hear from Shania. Thank you for being on this ride with us. We have a lot of work to do. Appreciate it. Troy, I know we'll continue to have conversation, but thank you for continuing to be authentic in the work you're doing. And I want to just let you know and remind you that the comment period for the SCA closes on January 4th. Any members of your organizations or your sphere of influence that you feel should be commenting, there are still ways to do that. If you have not signed up to give testimony tomorrow, you can still write in and have that contributing to the information that will be going to FHWA. We are anticipating a decision document from the Federal Highway Administration by the spring. And then in mid-2023, we are planning for early work package designs to be finalized. There's a lot happening, a lot moving. That is forward progress. Your presence, your commitment to this process continues to elevate this to another level. We have an opportunity, it is a once in a lifetime opportunity to do something extraordinary together. Dr. Holt, if you would close us out, I would appreciate it.
Great meeting, robust conversation, and appropriately so. Let me say, welcome to the HAAB. Welcome to the reality of being involved in a conversation where people are passionate, where folks have been invested, where this is life's work. And I appreciate the discomfort. That's part of this process. We lean in, we don't lean out. We don't walk away, we don't run from difficult conversations, nor do we excuse the authenticity and transparency that goes along with it. It is as so eloquently stated by the one and the only, Miss Sharon Garrett Smith. This is our work. This is our life. This is our investment. So I appreciate the work and the time and the energy. Miss Sharon Garrett Smith, I say to you, most highest and sincerest respect. Appreciate the leadership that you brought to the community and the investment that you've given to this work. God's speed to you. May you enjoy every trip. May it be safe, refreshing, and renewing, well-deserved. We respect all that you've done and all that you've been and look forward to all of the heckling that might come from the audience at some point in the future. Our work is just like this, that we fight as family, but we fight for family so we can advance the things that need to be advanced. Thank you for your time tonight. Appreciate your work. Caitlin, I see that you have your hand up. So.
Well, it is hard to follow your closing. I'm sorry. And I know we're already past time. I just, because I didn't have a chance to introduce myself earlier, and it's been some time since I've seen many of you, I just wanted to quickly say hello. I'm Caitlin from PBOT, Major Projects and Partnerships. I've met many of you previously. When the city was away from the table, I was listening in on many of the HAAB meetings as you all did the work, deliberating the ICA work and getting to the hybrid 3 recommendation. Really appreciate being here tonight. Looking forward to working with you all more. And I will leave it there now, but yeah, just thank you.
Everyone, be safe through the holidays. Take care of yourselves. Celebrate being together and the appropriate kind of care and concern that should be shown. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Peace and blessings.
Absolutely.